Hi YouTube, Darth here. I can't believe what I'm reading here. This is a rumor. It may be false. It may be true. It can't be true, right? Well, if rumors are to be believed, and this one sounds somewhat credible, it seems Battlefield 1 will be taking an entirely different approach to servers than we're familiar with in Battlefield 3 and 4. There are two major bits to this rumor. The first is that EA DICE will no longer be using third parties to rent servers, and the second is that admins will have very limited control of the servers they are renting. Now as I continue here, keep in mind that this is straight from the rumor mill and literally nothing has been confirmed by DICE or EA. There's been no word on servers for Battlefield 1 or how they will operate, business or otherwise. This could all be disproven tomorrow. So with the disclaimer out of the way, let's look at the source of this rumor, a poster on Anarchy Gaming. To quote directly, he claims that our server provider has just informed us that they won't be providing any BF1 servers. In fact, no providers will be selling/renting BF1 servers in the traditional way they do now. Instead, MS Azure, Amazon, AWS, and i3D will provide server resources to DICE for selling on to communities directly. There will be limited access to server settings adjustments and no Procon, and I guess any alternative, option. So basically identical to the console model they deployed for BF4. Assuming his provider source is credible, what does this mean for server admins? Well, if you're on console, this probably won't be any different to you or the way you operate now. If you're a PC server operator, this is pretty bad news for you. If you're a PC player, this is a mix of good and bad news, and I'll talk about that too. Let's break this rumor down some more. First, it sounds like EA and DICE are only running first-party servers from now on. If you rent a server, you're renting directly from the source. Well, semi-directly, as it sounds like they're using cloud computing like Amazon Web Services. Regardless, the developers are in control of the hardware you're running on. This is a good thing. It lets them provide a baseline of game service expectations, meaning your game will probably run better and more reliably in Battlefield 1 than previous Battlefield titles. Additionally, this could mean that we're seeing console rental options deployed at launch as opposed to months down the line as it was in Battlefield 4. The downside is that this change means you're going to be paying whatever they're asking. There likely won't be any price competition between sources. So I feel the first bit of this rumor is plausibly a good thing. More reliable server architecture for the developers and gamers will mean fewer server issues as the game matures. At least in theory. And as an anecdote, beyond the first night, I didn't see many server issues with the BF1 beta. Therefore, I feel like this part of the server change seems perfectly reasonable. As players, we get a more reliable and even experience. The other half of this rumor deals with admin control over servers. In Battlefield 4, server admins on PC have tons of controls. They can kick and ban players at will, enact rules like no shotguns on their server, set the player count for Rush as high as 64 players, and pretty much run things however they see fit. This is all provided they run the server as a ranked server. This works okay for established communities of players where you're likely to have a base of players that join regularly. However, if you're a small community, you're more likely running your server as an official server. This lets players who use Battlefield 4's built-in joining features to join your server, thus keeping it more populated. However, official servers greatly restrict the amount of control you can have over the server in Battlefield 4. For the most part, they restrict the ability to kick or ban players, move players to different teams, setting up map votes, or many other game mode distinctions you've seen servers give players. Though there are tricks that seem to let some admins do these things despite them not being sanctioned. In Battlefield 1, from the rumor it sounds like there are going to be no such power tools given to admins. Admins will not be able to change up the game settings beyond clamped values, which by the way we don't know how restrictive those will be, and admins of rented servers will have essentially the same restrictions as official servers in Battlefield 4 and Hardline. That's a double-edged sword there, great news and terrible news, probably depending on who you are. If you're a player who just wants to play the default game modes without alteration or adulteration, you're going to be just fine. I played all of the Battlefield 1 beta and didn't notice this at all. As another example, Rush is balanced for 24 players in Battlefield 1. As a server admin, you may be stuck with that number, and even if you want to change it to be 64 players, you won't be able to. Again, this lets the developers define what the optimal experience is in their game and balance around that. As a player, things like abusive admins and disparate game modes like 4000 Ticket Metro or instant vehicle respawns will be a thing of the past. If, and that's a big assumption, you're looking for a pure experience, then pretty much every Battlefield 1 game will have relatively consistent rules. However, to players and server admins that want a measure of control over their servers, this sounds pretty horrible. Some have taken this reduction in admin ability to mean that cheaters and griefers will be as abundant as they ever were on any official server in Battlefield 4. Although I find it really hard to believe that DICE wouldn't provide any measure of control to get rid of abusive players beyond their global fair fight and punkbuster tools. But all this does beg the question of, why would anybody rent a Battlefield 1 server? It's clear even from the beta that DICE is pushing players to use the matchmaking tools more than ever. The server browser exists, but it's as an option placed after all the matchmaking tools. Honestly, I ended up not using it at all during the Battlefield 1 beta as there was really no reason to do so. There were no custom servers worth browsing for. It sounds like the retail game might also not have much reason to peek in there as well if the rumors are to be believed. But that's the key factor here. How much we don't know and how much this rumor might just be a lack of information. As I said earlier, DICE has released literally no information to the public on this topic yet. 2 years ago, DICE hired the developer of one of the community server tools, and we've yet to see the full fruit of that relationship. It could very well be that there are very robust server and admin tools that we've not yet seen. But 6 weeks out from launch, for no information to be available on this topic seems to be worth being concerned over. But like I said, there are positives to this development as well. We'll likely see better and more consistent server performance, more consistent rule sets across games, and less admin abuse. But I can't help but feel like the baby has been thrown out with the bathwater on this decision, if the rumor is to be believed. Again, this could all be dispelled tomorrow. As for me, I don't think this is going to affect how I play Battlefield 1, but I know it will negatively impact specific communities and particularly players inclined to rent and control their own servers. Ultimately, I hope that the second half of the rumor just turns out to be a rumor and that we can all enjoy the same relative level of control we did in previous Battlefield titles. But how do you feel about this rumor? Does this affect you at all? Do you care? Do you think the prospective changes to servers are good or bad? Let me know in the comments below. If you're new around here, check out my channel and please consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.